The end of northern unity. New ethnic blocs rising against Fulani dominance. For 60 years, every serious presidential candidate in Nigeria has made the same calculation. Secure the north and you secure the presidency. It was that simple. The north was one thing, one bloc, one identity, one kingmaker. That calculation is no longer reliable. Something is fracturing across northern Nigeria, not in a party convention, not in a press release, but in the villages of Zamfara and Katsina, where Hausa farming communities have been burying their dead for a decade and asking why nobody in power has been held accountable. In this video, I am going to show you what is breaking, why it is breaking now, and what it means for the 2027 election and for Nigeria's future. If you are new here, subscribe now. Every video on this channel is researched and verified. No speculation presented as fact. If you value that, hit subscribe. Let us get into this. To understand what is collapsing, you first need to understand what was built and how it was built. The term Hausa Fulani does not describe two groups that have always been one. It describes a political alliance forged over 2 centuries of conquest, colonialism, and calculated self-interest. In the early 19th century, the Fulani religious scholar Usman Dan Fodio led a jihad across Hausa land. He overthrew the Hausa Habe kings, established the Sokoto Caliphate in 1804, and placed Fulani emirs in political control of Hausa cities, Kano, Katsina, Zaria, Sokoto. The Hausa provided the population, the language, the farmland, and the culture. The Fulani provided the ruling class. Then the British arrived. The colonial administration, under Lord Lugart's policy of indirect rule, chose to govern northern Nigeria through the existing Sokoto Caliphate hierarchy. They formalized Fulani political dominance as the architecture of British colonial administration. Over 100 distinct ethnic nations in the north were subsumed under that single structure. When Nigeria gained independence in 1960, the new political parties inherited those colonial boundaries. The Northern People's Congress, the region's dominant party, was led by Fulani elites, and the Hausa Fulani label became a shorthand for a political arrangement that served those elites far more than it served the Hausa majority. One Nigerian historian described it plainly. For over 100 years, northern Nigeria has been held together by a politically contrived ethnic fusion, expediently branded as Hausa Fulani. It aggregated demographic weight for political relevance. Beneath it, however, a very different reality existed. The Fulani, who are a numerical minority within that compound label, held the emirate seats, the governorships, and the security architecture. That arrangement worked as long as both groups needed each other. When it stopped working, the fracture began. The fracture did not begin with a political speech. It began with bodies. Between 2013 and 2022, armed bandits, predominantly from Fulani-linked militia groups, killed at least 8,300 people across the northwest. Zamfara alone accounted for more than 4,000 of those deaths. In Kaduna, nearly 2,000. In Katsina, over 1,400. Over 200,000 people were displaced from Zamfara alone. By 2024 and 2025, the crisis had not improved, it had worsened. The National Human Rights Commission documented 3,012 kidnappings and 3,584 killings across Nigeria between January 2024 and April 2025. Kidnapping-related fatalities increased from 425 in 2024 to 747 in 2025, with Zamfara, Katsina, and Sokoto recording the highest death tolls. In the first half of 2025 alone, at least 2,266 people were killed by insurgents and armed bandits, a figure that surpassed the total casualty count for all of 2024. The states affected by rural banditry expanded from 9 states in 2024 to 16 by the end of 2025. These are not abstract statistics. These are Hausa farming communities, the same communities that have been voting as part of the Hausa Fulani political bloc since independence, being killed, kidnapped, and displaced while the Fulani-dominated political establishment governing their states either failed to stop it or, according to persistent allegations never yet prosecuted, maintained relationships with some of the armed groups. The Sofan Center documented the pattern in August 2025. The conflict had shifted from criminal banditry to something resembling organized insurgency. Armed groups coordinated attacks across multiple states. Warlords operated with visibility and apparent impunity. On August 19th, gunmen attacked a mosque in Katsina, killing at least 30 worshippers. Earlier that month, bandits abducted 50 people in Zamfara in a single coordinated raid. And through all of it, the same question circulated across Hausa communities, on social media, in village councils, and in open protests. Why have the Fulani political figures who govern these states not been held accountable? Why has the Sokoto Caliphate leadership, the religious and political apex of Fulani authority, not been required to answer for the conduct of armed groups operating under the Fulani identity? The growing public answer from Hausa activists and community leaders in Kano, Kaduna, and Zamfara was a phrase being repeated with increasing frequency: "We are not one people." Now add a second layer to this story, because the fracture is not only within the Hausa Fulani bloc. It also runs between that bloc and the 6 states of Nigeria's Middle Belt. Benue, Plateau, Kogi, Nasarawa, Niger, and Kwara states contain some of Nigeria's greatest ethnic diversity. The Tiv, Nupe, Igala, Idoma, and Berom peoples, among dozens of others. These groups are predominantly Christian. They were forcibly merged into the northern political structure during colonialism against their preferences. The Middle Belt was never culturally or politically Hausa Fulani. It was administratively absorbed. The violence in the Middle Belt has been even more sustained than in the Northwest. In Benue State, as of late 2024, the International Organization for Migration counted over 500,000 registered internally displaced persons, communities unable to return to their land. By March 2026, Benue's governor, Hyacinth Alia, reported that 17 out of 23 local government areas in his state were under siege from armed attacks. A federal lawmaker stated publicly that Fulani herdsmen had taken over 40% of Benue's land, displacing thousands of indigenous peoples. In Plateau State, the pattern was identical. In April 2025, gunmen attacked communities in the Mwagavu chiefdom, killing at least 52 people. Since 2021, the Nigeria Violent Conflicts Database has recorded 1,146 deaths from violence in Plateau State alone. These communities do not vote as part of a northern Muslim presidential coalition. They vote as communities fighting for survival. In 2023, Peter Obi won Plateau State. He performed strongly in Benue and Kogi. The Middle Belt is a bloc, but it is not Tinubu's bloc, and it is not Atiku's bloc. Into this already fragile northern landscape, President Tinubu introduced a new pressure point: his pattern of federal appointments. Since assuming office in May 2023, Tinubu has repeatedly faced documented, sourced accusations of concentrating key appointments within his Yoruba ethnic base. The criticism is specific, not general. Key targets of the accusations include the central bank governor, the NNPC chief executive, the finance minister, and successive inspector generals of police. In February 2026, Tinubu appointed Tunji Disu from the Southwest as acting Inspector General of Police, drawing fresh protests from northern stakeholders who argued that given the catastrophic insecurity in the Northwest, a northern police chief was not just symbolically important but operationally necessary. Section 14, subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution mandates that the composition of government shall reflect Nigeria's federal character. The presidency has argued consistently that merit governs appointments. Critics, including the Arewa Consortium Forum, have argued that such appointments breach both the Constitution and the political understanding that brought Tinubu into power. The Arewa Consortium Forum, northern Nigeria's leading socio-political body, has been unambiguous. It criticized Tinubu's economic policies as insensitive to northern conditions. It stated that public policy responses to insecurity in the north have remained ineffective. And in language that functioned as a political warning, it declared the interests of the north will be best served by northerners. The Council on Foreign Relations in an April 2026 analysis framed Tinubu's position. He secured the presidency with critical northern support in 2022 and 2023. If he loses that support, or if northern voters simply split in too many directions, his path to a second term becomes significantly narrower.
Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Is what you are hearing new to you, or have you been watching this coming for years? Hit subscribe if you haven't. Hit like so more Nigerians can see this analysis. Here is where it gets serious. So the North is fracturing along at least 3 lines. Hausa communities asserting independence from Fulani political control, the Middle Belt refusing to be absorbed into a northern Muslim presidential coalition, and the Arewa establishment warning Tinubu that northern patience is not unlimited. The question is, who benefits from this fragmentation and who has the strategy to convert it into votes? For Tinubu, a divided north is strategically convenient in the short term. His 2023 presidential victory was built precisely on northern votes splitting 3 ways between himself, Atiku Abubakar, and Peter Obi. A northern bloc united behind a single candidate in 2027 would present a far more dangerous challenge than one divided among 3 or 4 platforms. If that fragmentation continues, a consolidated Yoruba base in the southwest plus a minority share of the northern vote could be enough for a second term. Here is the complication that may yet save Tinubu's second term. The opposition cannot organize itself. In November 2025, the most ambitious opposition realignment in more than a decade was announced. Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, former Kaduna Governor Nasir El-Rufai, and Rotimi Amaechi coming together under the African Democratic Congress. It was billed as a coalition powerful enough to unseat a sitting president. By May 5, 2026, it was over. Peter Obi and Kwankwaso had quit the ADC, citing, in Obi's words, endless court cases, internal battles, suspicion, and division. Obi and Kwankwaso then moved to the Nigerian Democratic Congress. Atiku remained in the ADC. Amaechi also defected from the APC and joined ADC, but the coalition's coherence was fractured. As of today, the opposition is running at least 2 separate presidential candidacies. Political analysts and northern stakeholders interviewed by Daily Post in May 2026 stated what is now obvious. If Atiku and Obi run separately, northern votes split again, and Tinubu wins a second term without needing to resolve a single one of the northern grievances driving this analysis. For Atiku Abubakar, the picture is different and much more difficult. His political identity for 30 decades has been built on claiming to represent the north. He is Fulani, from Adamawa State in the northeast. If the Hausa self-assertion movement consolidates into a genuine political force, if Hausa communities in the northwest begin voting as a distinct bloc rather than as part of a Hausa-Fulani alliance, then Atiku's claim to northern unity becomes contested territory. For Peter Obi and his running partner, former Kano Governor Rabiu Kwankwaso, the fracture represents the most important opening in Nigerian politics in a generation. As recently as April 2026, the two were reported to be consolidating an alliance under the Nigerian Democratic Congress, pushing a one-term power rotation agenda specifically designed to attract northern leaders away from both Atiku and Tinubu. Kwankwaso holds genuine political weight in Kano, Nigeria's second most populous state. If Obi and Kwankwaso can lock in Kano, add Plateau and the Middle Belt, and carry the southeast, they become mathematically credible. So, here is where we are. The Hausa-Fulani political alliance, the arrangement that has governed Nigerian presidential politics since independence, is under genuine, documented strain. It is driven not by ideology, but by grief. A decade of mass violence against Hausa farming communities that Fulani-led political structures failed to prevent or prosecute. The Middle Belt has never been part of that alliance in any meaningful sense. It has been voting against it since 2023. Tinubu has compounded northern alienation with an appointments record the Arewa Consortium Forum has publicly described as marginalizing the region that put him in power. And yet, the opposition cannot produce a single candidate to channel that discontent, which means the beneficiary of all this fracture, of all this anger, of all this legitimate northern grievance may be the sitting president himself. That is not a coincidence. That is Nigerian politics. The question I want to leave you with is this. If northern communities are ready for a new political alignment, are the opposition figures available to them actually worthy of that alignment, or is the North simply being handed the same choices in different packaging? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one of them.
That is all for today. If this video gave you something real to think about, like it, share it, and subscribe. I started this channel to tell the truth about Nigeria as clearly as possible. Your support keeps that work going. Stay informed. Nigeria Crisis and Politics.